Attention! Welcome, new recruits, to Helldivers 2. You're probably here because you want to learn how to get started on your mission to spread managed democracy. Well, you've come to the right place. With the recent announcement of Helldivers 2 receiving support from the Xbox players, I thought it would be best to provide an up-to-date guide on the basics of the game, and how to make each new recruit's instruction simple to understand. Please note, this video has been made to guide you from the beginning of the game and advise you in the lower levels based on my own opinion and experience within my time playing. Let's get into it. So, you've just completed your basic training. Now you want to know how to start. Well, it all starts right here, with your Super Destroyer. Once you choose a name for your ship, you'll be on board and free to roam. Have a look around, because this is all yours. We'll get into the Destroyer part soon, but for now, let's go to the most important part. The War Map. This is what allows you to select your missions and displays the community's current goal, otherwise known as a major order. This is the main mission focus set for the player base. It's important to know that the MO does not control where you go. This is simply a guide for what to focus on. Anyone is free to dive where they want. However, I highly recommend following these orders, as each successful MO grants rewards, and we need everyone we can get to complete these missions. See these lines in between the planets? These are the supply lines that link each planet. Supply lines indicate which planets we can attack, but also what planets are vulnerable to an attack from our enemies. By looking at these lines, we can gather useful information. For example, if a planet has one line connected to it from enemy borders, this is showing where the planet is being attacked from. If a planet has multiple lines going to it from enemy planets, then it's being provided with multiple lines of reinforcements. This likely means the planet is unlikely to have a successful defense campaign. One more thing to note about supply lines is something called a gambit play. I'll use a popular gambit play as an example, the Battle of Yalova. Its automatons at one point unleashed the Jet Brigade, which lay waste to many planets around their borders. The Helldivers fought to hold them back, but their army was just too large, and quickly made their way through our lines. Eventually, they made their way to Mastia, and took that, with Yalova next on their rampage. But the Helldivers gathered their forces, and split them between the two planets, to capture Mastia, and slow down the attack on Yalova by defending it at the same time. This gambit play led to Mastia being liberated, which meant that the bots were completely cut off from their supply line, thus bringing a successful defense as well. A gambit play is like a high-risk, high-reward tactic. The risk lay in the fact that our forces were split, and we could very well have lost Yalova before we captured Mastia, but because we did take it, so it slowed down the attack on Yalova enough so that when the two halves rejoined on one planet, it was easily taken. Understanding how supply lines work can lead to many other similar situations. The war is not all about attacking from the front line. Now, let's move on to the rest of the ship. Let's have a look over here at the terminals on the left. Head over to a computer and have a look. Here, you have access to everything about your Super Destroyer, like its details. But the most important section is the stratagems list. This shows you every single stratagem that will be available to you eventually as you level up and get more resources. These are all separated by which ship module controls the stratagem, but the most important thing to remember is the colour type of the stratagem. Blue stratagems are your support items, which include on-hand weapons of various sorts, or items that can aid your style of play. There is a variety here, so there is something for everyone, from anti-armor, machine guns, or even a flamethrower if you like your enemies deep-fried and crispy. Next up are the red stratagems. These are your offense abilities that are either shot from the ship in the form of orbitals or Eagle 1, which delivers payloads. What they have in common is their ability to take out a large amount of enemies with just one call-in. It's good to note that typically, orbital strikes have a longer time to strike due to coming from orbit, but deliver a very powerful blow. Eagle strikes will have a faster delivery time and can be used more than once before needing a recharge, with the damage not being as high as orbital strikes. Finally, you've got green stratagems. There are turrets and other stationary weapons. These are simple additions to the ship, but could be strong addition to your loadout if you pick the right ones and use them correctly. These include mines, automated turrets, and stationary turrets that could be used by the player. I'll get into the turrets later, just due to their variety. Now, for the ship module upgrades. Down here, you can see the cost of a level 1 upgrade is 60, followed by a green mark. These are common samples, which can be picked up during missions. Samples are all used here to upgrade your ship to provide strong bonuses to the use of your stratagems. There is no order to buying these upgrades. You can upgrade however you like. All you're going to do is get the previous upgrade for each module. I do recommend getting the first of each module and potentially focusing on the Eagle stratagems until you get the upgrade, which gives you an extra Eagle call-in. Now, back to stratagems, since we've got some samples and requisition slips, as you can see above. We have requisition slips, super credits, medals, common, rare, and super samples. For a new stratagem, I personally like the strafing run. This will call in Eagle 1 to fire a strafe run going directly in front of where you called it in, like this.
Here comes the cavalry.
Or there is the Eagle Strike that calls in a bombing run that comes from the side or where you caught it. Probably one of the best stratagems for an all-round use, but like I already said, the choice is up to you, and ultimately you have full freedom on what you use, other than needing certain levels for stratagems. The Armory. Here, you choose your loadout that you always spawn with, even when you die in missions. Your loadout will likely change depending on what faction you fight and what weapons you have access to. I'll be covering the other factions in another set of videos. For now, you start with nothing, the basic weapon until you get more. Except armor, where you start with a few different types with different effects. Armor type is something that's really important, as each set of armor has a different passive effect, like 50% chance to not die on lethal damage, extra sims for medic armor, or just standard armor, which provides extra resistance. There is also light, medium, and heavy armor, which you will also get through war bonds, which will alter your armor value and movement speed. And you have helmets, which have no bonuses at all, so just grab the matching one to look your best for the mission. And with that, we go to the last section to talk about, which is the acquisition page. This contains all the war bonds, which are essentially like a battle pass, but instead provide new gear to use with a couple of cosmetics here and there. Don't worry about missing out on any of the previous ones though, because all the war bonds we've had stay around forever. The free war bond, Helldivers Mobilize, is your starting point. All the items you see here use medals, which are earned by completing missions, major orders, or by finding them at points of interest. I highly recommend that you purchase all weapons, body armor, super credits, and other weapons or boosters first, as these are the most important items for progression and reaching higher difficulties, as well as increasing the amount of things you can do in these missions. Now, those old war bonds, those cost super credits, which can be attained in 3 ways. From other war bonds, find them in missions, which take some patience, or if you don't fill up to the grind, they are available for purchase with actual money within the store. Let's get back to the missions, which I talked about earlier. Now you have mission difficulty. These also have progression to them. You need to have completed a full operation on the previous difficulty in order to play any higher difficulties. You may wonder, what difficulties entail? Well, the higher the difficulty, the more the game will throw at you. Rather than making enemies faster, stronger, and smarter like other games do, Helldivers will increase the number of enemies, the type of enemies, and even variants of enemies. It also provides more access to rewards and loot in missions. Once you reach level 5, you'll have access to all enemies, and after that, the difficulties will make those enemies more common. Like in level 5, you'll see maybe 1 or 2 Bio Titans. Then at level 10, you will experience every Bio Titan the game is out to give you. The difficulty will also give you different missions to complete once you move out of the lower levels, as well as more side missions to complete. All of this will provide greater rewards, like earning more slips and XP. You will also gain access to better samples and more available samples spawning, with rare samples being available from level 4 and super samples from level 7 and up. these super samples spawn at a very specific rock, which I'll show you right now. So, that there is the information you'll need to know for the start of the game and progression as you play more. Now, I'm going to go into some deeper details to help you better understand the gameplay and how you might be able to improve without feeling lost. There are many different types of enemies in Helldivers, all with different ways of making you become a brand new reinforcement. To understand the enemies better, I found it easier to separate all enemies from each faction into 4 classes. This made me understand what loadout to bring when going up against the different factions, and what was most effective in terms of weapons and stratagems. First up, we have Class 1 enemies, or in other words, your grunts. The little guys who pest you with their shit numbers. They're made up of enemies that have low armor value and can be crushed with just a couple of rounds, though it's best not to underestimate them. Class 2 enemies are your tougher units, typically medium armor, and have enough presence to make them impressive if they are left for too long or if they have large numbers. Their damage output is definitely what makes them a unique addition to each faction. Class 3 enemies, the heavies, the tanks. These units are heavy armor enemies that must be dealt with swiftly before they wipe out you and your team. Usually with heavy weapons or stratagems, they cannot be ignored. Then there is the Class 4 enemy units, or as I like to call them, the Titans of the battlefield. Large enemies with overwhelming presence and damage. Failing to kill these units could end up with your team facing a hard time, as long as they are present. Usually more common than the higher levels of the game, so if you're new to high difficulty, you'll need some good gear. I'll be covering this in a different video about each faction, where I'll go into detail about recommended gear to bring and what enemies you can expect to go against. With the classes now in mind, you'll be able to make a better decision on what weapons to bring, as each faction is comprised of a different amount of these classes. But what are the different enemy factions? Well, the first faction is the Terminids, often referred to as the Bugs. This is a faction of alien insects that will consume all who they see. They spread rapidly across the galaxy and must be squashed. The Bugs are also an essential resource, as they are made up of a substance called Element 170, a vital fuel source for the Super Earth and its military. For gameplay though, the Bugs are a close-range engagement force made up of a mixture of different enemy classes, probably the easier faction to play against in the game, but that does not mean you can underestimate them. The variety in units makes it difficult to prepare for all engagements. You can easily be overwhelmed by the Bugs if you do not bring the proper loadouts. You'll typically run into more Class 1 and 2 enemies when fighting the Terminids. The next faction to know about is the Automatons, otherwise referred to as the Bots. A faction of deadly robots that are possibly the most powerful faction to fight against in the entire game. The bots are relentless in their overwhelmingly heavy assaults. If you thought you knew what explosions looked like, then look to the bots, because you'll be rolling around from every tank shot or rocket barrage that there is, and you'll be needing your own explosions to take them all out, because the bots are heavily armoured and they do not care about our tiny little bullets. Your typical bot mission will have lots of units within the class 2 to 3 range, with the occasional class 4. And there is also some grunt units within the faction, but the main threat is the amount of heavy armour you'll be up against. Bots originate from a planet called Cyberstan, from some cyborgs that were defeated during the First Great War. These cyborgs were thought to have created the Automatons to create their own army and retake Cyberstan, which as of right now they do actually have, and establish their own army. Do not underestimate the Automatons one bit, because they are powerful, deadly, and require sheer focus if you are to play against them. Their playstyle is completely different from the Bugs you'll be used to as you start off the game, due to the fact that they have lots of range units and melee units. Finally, the Illuminate, aka the Squids, an autocratic empire hell-bent on destroying humanity. Thought to have been wiped out in the First War, they've now returned by means of a wormhole that we may or may not have created. If you want to know about that, just have a look up online what happened at Meridia. It's long story short, the Bugs had a super colony there, and we blew it up. The Squids are technologically superior to us in every way, and this is shown by the firepower they bring to their fights. Their faction is made a bit differently to the other two, in the sense that their class system I've been using right now applies differently to them. Instead of the usual damage and armor value I've been using, it's primarily the damage value that I look at, as their armor and even their Titan class enemy of the Harvester is a medium. The Squids have a lot of medium armor enemies, so when it comes to weapons, you'll need to consider more carefully what you bring to the battle against them, which I should cover in another video. For now, just know you want to be ready for crowd control and speed in these jobs. So, now that we've covered the different factions you'll be fighting, let's have a look at the different difficulties you can play at in a bit more detail. There's a total of 10 difficulties that can be played. At first, you might be wondering what are the right levels to play at, or when is it best to go up a difficulty. Well, let's have a look at that and go back to the list of levels here. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, level 1 is what you're forced to start on. You then have levels 2 and 3, which I recommend as the beginning levels. These will slowly introduce you to the game so you can learn more about how to fight, and also allow you to get plenty of common samples without any high risk of losing them, just so you can get those starter upgrades. The next range of levels is 4 to 6, which is where you should be playing at if you've gained some experience and have access to a large range of weapons and stratagems and are more confident with the game knowledge. Level 4 is where you start to be introduced to more difficult enemies as a mission objective, such as Bio-Titan hunt missions. Level 5 and 6 will grant you a little extra difficulty to the game by giving you access to all the available enemies, and you'll even have more resources to gather with better samples. Levels 7 to 9 are your higher level of play. Enemies will have variants like the Behemoth Charger or the Reinforced Scout Strider, which are tougher to take down overall. The game will punish you more with extra patrols and larger spawn amounts in reinforcement calls, but you do also get access to the super rare samples in this. Finally, you have level 10, the maximum difficulty in the game. This mission level is for divers with access to most, if not all, available gear. This difficulty will push you and requires you to have your sensors about you, with a decent loadout as it throws whatever it can at you. You can also definitely expect death in this difficulty, but the reward is so worth it with a large amount of XP, requisition slips, and a large amount of available samples, if you're actually able to bring them back to the extraction. So, if you can handle it and really want to fast track your progress, then play this difficulty. Let's go back to the defense stratagems. Turrets are your main type in this category, and their placement is key for getting their full effectiveness. So, you're in a situation where there's a bug breach right in front of you and you have a turret to place. But where do you want it so that it is effective and safe for your team? Well, you don't want it in front of you, as it will likely be destroyed by the incoming bugs. You could place it casually near you, but then you have the issue of your team and yourself. Turrets lock onto enemies and will fire even if someone is in front of it. They don't care. You're just an obstacle that they can remove. Now you could place it off to the side with some cover, but then you have to remove sight lines, and any bugs going around it might just destroy. So, where is the best placement? Rocks and elevated ground. Yes, the Obi-Wan method. High ground for turrets means less threat of an accidental, more lines of sight for the turret, and enemies are less likely to destroy it. You then have mines and the Tesla Tower. Honestly, I would just say to only bring them on defense missions. They're just a huge threat. Using them cuts off routes for you and your team just as much as they do the enemy, and they're a huge risk for team killing. You then have the two stationary turrets that are available. There is the anti-tank emplacement and the stationary machine gun. If you have line of sight on where you want to shoot, then go ahead and throw them wherever you want, but the high ground method still applies and is very effective. Let's finish off with some general tips and tricks for the game. Just some odd bits of information that will make your life a little bit easier. Tip 1. Memorizing stratagem inputs. It goes without saying that in a stressful situation or an intense fight, you don't want to sit there and read what inputs to put in and then type them in slowly. Remembering them will come with time, but I do suggest learning the more important inputs, which by far, the most important one is the reinforced stratagem. Every soldier counts in a fight, and you could always bring back a teammate that has the perfect stratagem for wiping out a swarm of enemies. Another to remember is the resupply stratagem. At first, you may not think this is one, but there are times when you could run out of ammo in a fight and need that resupply quickly. It's an easy one to remember and can make the difference. Tip 2. Dead teammates and where they died. You'll often find that players will split up during a mission. After all, it covers more ground, and if everyone is competent enough, then it could halve your mission time. However, there are times when someone dies in these moments. You should always check your map in terms of this, because calling someone back in without realising they're on the other side of the map can be really annoying. Just imagine that you were all on the other side of the map and you had to run all the way back there just to get your weapons. Calling someone back is not something that always needs to be rushed, so you can just make it take a little bit of that extra time to check. If they were on their own, go ahead and do it, but imagine you were the one without a support weapon and had to run across the map. Tip 3. Everything is shared. Yeah, that's right. All samples, super credits, requisition slips, everything is shared for every single player on your team, so you have no need to worry about rushing for them. We all get the same reward at the end of the mission. Only thing that is not shared is resources like ammo, grenades, and stims, which leads to the next tip. Tip 4. Resupply etiquette. Resupply pods arrive with 4 crates of supplies that fill your ammo, grenades, support items, and 2 sims. Once you have the upgrade, otherwise the base kit gives less ammo and grenades. This means 1 for each player in a 4-person lobby. Don't be that person who takes more than 1 crate just because you want the extra supplies. Let's share it all out. Tip 5. Extraction etiquette. A quick tip on calling for extract. Make sure everyone is ready to go. Sometimes players might be finishing side objectives or still be in a fight and can't get there immediately. Just do a quick chat message or use your mic to make sure that everyone is cool for it. Unless you're all there, then it's safe to assume that you can get on. But always be sure to check. Tip 6. Know your enemy. This comes with the amount of time that you play, but you should try to learn what is and what isn't effective against the enemies in the game. Not all weapons work against each faction. Some stratagems are useless against some enemy types, but have value against others. Some support weapons have a lot of effect against, say, heavy enemies in the boss, but don't work so well against the squids. Tip 7. Know your map. Make sure you know where you're landing. Not knowing that you're in a dense forest map or a city could mean you bring stratagems to get blocked half the time by a giant tree or a skyscraper. These kind of maps require you to be smart of your loadout. For these maps, I do tend to bring an orbital on the forests or an eagle strafe, as they are less likely to be blocked. Tip 8. Clearing bases. Bases influence your mission and the patrols that roam around the map. When you destroy enemy bases, it will reduce enemy patrols in that area, but will increase the map-wide spawns, especially after clearing more than 50% of the bases. Completing the main objective, though, will have a much more noticeable effect on the spawn rate of patrols, so I recommend finishing the main objective last if you want to get loot and side missions done. A little extra note, clearing bases and side missions also helps to the progress of liberating a planet, so be sure to clear those maps of enemies. Tip 9. Shooting. In Helldivers, you're going to have to get used to a different style of shooting. No more running around and shooting or crouch spams. Aiming while moving will give you lots of sway and make it harder for you to hit your target. So start standing still a bit more while shooting, or even crouching to get a nice steady aim. Stay moving, but take time to steady yourself before dumping your magazine. Tip 10. Boosters. As you earn more boosters from war bonds, you will have a variety of boosts to bring, but you'll find that only a few of them provide a top tier value. The best boosters by far would have to be health pod optimization, stamina enhancement, experimental infusion, and vitality enhancement. These are the S tier boosters. Some of the others have some potential use in different situations, like muscle enhancement, which is good for planets which have poor terrain, because those consume more stamina as you sprint. But otherwise, there's quite a few that just don't have much value. Tip 11. Inventory. The inventory shows your support weapon slots, a mission item you're carrying, like an SSSD, and your samples if you have any. You could drop any of these at any time. This is useful to know, especially for samples. If you happen to be going near extraction before the end of a mission and you have lots of samples on you, I highly recommend dropping them there, as it'll leave them nice and safe so that you can secure them as you finish. On PC, the prompt is X, PlayStation is down on D-pad, and Xbox is the same. Tip 12. Pods do damage. Yep, that's right. Even after coming back to the fight, you can still crush enemies, or even with a well-placed resupply. Most enemies in the game can be taken down in one accurate pod drop, but some, the large enemies in particular, and the tanks in the bot faction, cannot be crushed in one shot. Well, that's all I have for now in terms of start your democratic mission in Helldivers. The rest is up to you. Get out there and conquer the galaxy for Super Earth, and bring the Tyrants of Liberty to their knees. If you have any questions, be sure to comment down below. If you're an experienced diver, then maybe drop some wisdom I may have missed. And if you enjoyed this, consider dropping a like and subscribing. Also, be sure to check out my Twitch. I'm much more active there. Thanks for watching.